it has started from the colonial period, because as we all knows that they have they those group or the that administration, they have come for a particular purpose, that is for a trade purpose. Okay, and they have they have established a particular colony in India. So to rule the state or to rule the India, they have to know the people who are living in this country. Okay, so first they started to identify the different communities of India. So the first of a kind study, you can say, uh, the British administrator, they have studied the tribal communities in the pre-independence era or in the colonial period, you can say. Okay, so and the basic objective of that studies were to strengthen their uh, ruling purpose, or to strengthen their ruling methods, you can say. Okay, how they can will how they can have a will hold over the different communities of India. They wanted to know the different individuals or different communities of India or Indian society. So from that point they have started to study. And prior to that, you can say, the different as we all knows that the uh, mm, base of social anthropology or the anthropology itself, the base of that discipline is studying the tribal community. No doubt, prior to British administrator, they have also studied the tribal communities, but their purpose was different. Okay, they have just studied the tribal communities as a different other social groups. Okay, and that purpose was for the academics only. Okay, so like they have done certain ethnographic studies of different Indian tribal communities. Okay, so prior to British administrator, the scholars from British administration, they have studied the tribal communities, or various anthropologists, they have studied the tribal communities in India. Okay, so as the Indian communities or Indian tribal communities, they were getting studied. So the first, you will say, the impression was started that how we got to know who are they. Basically they are termed as the a separate community who have a homogeneity or common territory or common language they speak. They have a common administration. Okay, uh, uh, from those administrative studies we know that yes, there are communities who are living in India, and they have these kind of characteristics, or these kind, the nature of that communities are these, like homogeneity, common language, or common territory, or you can say that the chip or the common ruling system or the administration. Okay, uh, and uh, and another important characteristics or another important nature it was known to the society was, yes, they are different from the caste community, or you can say the caste. Like India was the Indian society, that was mainly the major characteristics or the major nature of that Indian society was the caste society. Okay, so after the study of those British administrators or the anthropologist, so there was a view that the other communities are also existing and they are different from the caste community. Okay, so and they have a different religion. They and you can say they some propositions or some opinions were also like that. They are also the part of the mainstream religion. Okay, so uh, uh, um, um, the main objectives of those tribal studies, or when we have forwarded towards the post independence, so the objectives of those tribal studies were to promote the tribal art, or you can say the culture, tradition, heritage, and how to preserve their culture, or how to promote their culture, or how to promote those art artifacts. It was for those purpose. And in the late post independence era, you can say, it was basically to introduce new livelihood pattern, or to those communities were mainly studies when we try to undertake certain kind of livelihood projects, or when we want to train them with the different kind of economic empowerments project, or particularly the you can say, uh, in the early 20th parts of decades of India, you will say, we have tried to investigate the different institutions of those tribal community. Okay, from knowing the tribal community, then we tried to introduce them with the concept called development, and we want to know the various issues of those tribal communities. Then we try to involve uh, our studies, or we directed our studies towards to know the different recent issues, like the studies based on the tribal rights or the human rights, or you can say the, how the different institutions or different groups are function in those tribal communities. Okay, so in the last part of our study, or the recent studies are mainly focusing on uh, the academic part of those tribal community, or we are more towards establishing a new discipline to study those tribal communities. Okay, uh, and if we st- try to analyze, or we try to discuss the evolution of those tribal studies, then as we state that the Britishers, or the British uh, administrator, or the anthropologists, they were the first who have started the study. And uh, in the late pre-independence era, or just prior to the independence, you will see the shift of those objectives has been done. Like, there are various institutions, higher education institutions were established in India. Okay, so the demand of those institutions, uh, it was like that this should be studies, those tribal community should be studies, like we want to expand the higher education, so different universities were established. And in those universities, like different social sciences departments, or schools were established. So like for example, uh, sociology, anthropology, or psychology, or you can say political science, different other social sciences, they have tried to involve their academic research or academic quest with the tribal communities. Okay, so the demand for, or you can say the scope of this discipline was increasing. Okay, and uh, after that, you will see, as we said, that after independence, we were involved in the welfareistic kind of development activities. Okay, so for that purpose also, we have tried to strengthen the uh, that discipline, or we want to study more that tribal communities. Okay, so for that purpose, like if we want to implement certain kind of policies, or you can say action based policies, So definitely we have a pilot study over those tribal communities. Okay, so when India uh, started its plan for a particular um, um, objective called development, so definitely it has started studying the different tribal communities. So state has also given interest in studying the tribal communities. Okay, so from the British administrator, newly formulated state after independence, they have started given interest to the tribal communities. Okay, so they have also established many institutions where this community can be studies, specifically those community can be studies. For example, you will see the tribal studies department at Hampi. uh, all these institutions, they were established in the late 90s, after 1990s, you will see. And in Himachal Pradesh in 1994, and in Kannur it was in 1996, and in Odisha you will see a court in Koraput district was established. That is the Council of Analytical Tribal Studies that was established in 2022. Okay, that was established with the support of state government as well as the UGC. Okay, and because mm, it was established by UGC, so the court is specifically undertaking various kind of we will say the academic uh, research among those tribal communities. They wanted to establish a, a research environment in those tribal communities, or you can say the research through that course, the research scholars, they are taking interest in studying the tribal communities. Okay, so by those resource scholar, the specific issues which were taken by the resource scholar are like they want to they have taken the issues like they were not confined to the art and culture itself only. They have expanded their research work in the areas like, you can say, the empowerment of women, or the health practices of those tribal communities, or you can say the administration, the local administration of those tribal communities, or they have tried to uh, uh, know the issues like how the development or sustainability is understood in those communities. Okay, so there are various issues they have tried to capture. Okay, and ultimately these issues or these studies by the research scholar or academia, it will help the policy makers to formulate a better policy for those tribal community itself. Okay, for example, when a PhD scholar, he or she is taking off the issues like healthcare practices among the tribal communities, definitely it will be a addition to the health policies as a whole. Okay, so uh, b- b- and also these scholars or the institutions which were established by the with the support of state government or the central government, they have tried to measure or they have tried to evaluate the impacts of different changing forces. For example, globalization, modernization, or any other kind of economic changes which is affecting the tribal life. Okay, so uh, these studies is definitely going to help the uh, uh, policy makers at a large. And the anthropologist, as we said that they are mainly focusing on the issues like defining the tribal communities. As we said that, or discussed that tribal communities, universally the definition is not accepted, or the term is not universally accepted. We are still, or we are yet to define that community, because the community or the society is not static. It is continuously affected with the other, with various kind of changing forces. So there, obviously the definition or the term will change. Okay, so the anthropologists, they are involved in those kind of issues, how the criteria of defining tribal communities, it is getting changed, or how what are the different perspectives through which we can study those tribal communities. Okay, yes, those tribal communities, those anthropologists, or that social science group, they are also involved in the tribal development, or the development issue, or the transition change which is found in the cultural pattern, social networks, or or you can say the migration or health patterns of those tribal communities. Okay, so these studies, like the studies done by the state or studies done by the academia, they have broadened the scope of tribal studies. Okay, or it has opened many issues where uh, the discipline can sharpen its methodology or its nature. Okay, so gradually we can see that there is a great demand of this discipline, or great demand of tribal studies. Okay, as you all said, we all noticed that it is by the administrator, and it is also by the different scholars or academia. And uh, and another part or another party which is interested in those tribal communities is the non-governmental organizations or voluntary sector. They're also trying to study those tribal community. Okay, as you can say, they, as the part of the state, they are studying the tribal communities, and also independently they are taking up different issues for the tribal development. They are also involved in the developing a new concept or new methodologies, or you can say new blueprints for the development of those tribal communities. So we cannot ignore their contributions also. The various voluntary communities or civil society bodies, they are trying to study those tribal communities. Okay, so there is a growing demand of this discipline. And if we uh, mm, discuss the nature of tribal studies, it can be mainly divided into four characteristics. Okay, that is the objectivity and precision. Third is the design, and fourth is the verifiability. Okay, as when we say tribal studies, we though it is not it has not become a full-fledged discipline in any university system, but certainly we try to investigate the tribal life with a systematic and scientific manner. Okay, so, and the approach to study those tribal community is basically we take the interdisciplinary approach. as we have discussed, that it has originated from the anthropology. Okay, so we also uh, try to investigate those tribal communities with the psychological perspective also. Okay, like for example, with the psychological point of view, uh, how a particular tribe is feeling in a particular situation. For example, you can say, in this digitized era, okay, how they are figuring out different institutions, or those traditional institutions. Okay, so we can put different lenses or different perspectives to their life. Okay, or how that person will react to different gadgets, or how that person will react to different that is healthcare practices. As we said, that there is a plurality of healthcare practices in India. So how they will react to those practices. Okay, or how they are reacting to different media. Okay, so we can have those kind of perspectives, psychological perspectives. Okay, so basically it is a inter the tribal study, it try to involve interdisciplinary approach when we when it try to investigate the tribal life. Okay, so and it is also necessary uh, in this present context. Okay, so because those communities, those tribal communities, they are not uh, homogeneous communities. Though traditionally the nature of those tribal society was termed as the homogeneous community. Okay, because we have tagged them as they have a common culture, common language, common religion. Okay, or common kind of administration, or a common territory. So we have tagged their lifestyle as a homogeneous, means there is a similarity, more similarity we will find out. But uh, as we know that in India we have more than uh, like 700 tribal communities. Okay, and among those tribal communities, in each and every tribal communities, they have their different subgroups are also there, and each subgroups have their unique culture and unique like tradition, you can say. Okay, so there are diverse tribal communities are there, and each uh, tribal communities has its own uniqueness. Okay, so to know all those heterogeneous community, and uh, we have to take off those interdisciplinary approach. Okay, so coming to the characteristics of those tribal study, first characteristics, as we stated, that it is objectivity. Okay, so uh, when we try to investigate the tribal life, or we go to those tribal societies, we should not go with our personal biasness. Okay, or like the data should be collected what the objective is demanding. Okay, or uh, uh, what the purpose is demanding. Okay, not what we want to take, or not what we want to hear. Okay, or we should not just give the generalized comment on their life. Okay, so it should be in a objective manner. So and we should find the logic in their um, social life, or when we are collecting the data, the logic or rationality should be given more important than the personal judgment or the biasness. uh, and those how that objectivity is collected, or how that objectivity is got, that is when we are applying certain standardized research instrument, or when we choose appropriate research design or appropriate analytical tool uh, to ensure, or when we to ensure that objectivity. Okay, so to get that objectivity in tribal studies, you have to take proper scientific research instrument, or research design to collect the data, and after the collection of data you have to analyze it. Okay, so that after analyzing that data, the information which you get, it can be for the public. Okay, and the second characteristics, or the second nature of tribal study is, that is precision. Okay, so like when we go to the field, or when we try to investigate the tribal societies, we come with a bulk of data. uh, uh, as many data as we can collect, or as many information we can carry with, we come with that much of information. Okay, so no doubt it is restricted the with your purpose or with your objective, but we uh, gather the data in a plural manner. Okay, so uh, at first sight of that data, we may not be we may not find certain objective information. Okay, so that has to be filtered, or that has to be analyzed with proper statistical tool. Okay, so by implementing or applying those statistical tool, we get that precise data or precise information, which can be for the further investigations. Okay, so we after analyzing those bulk data, we get those uh, information in a precise language, or we accurately describe those results, which can be correctly understood by the other researchers, or the other readers. Okay, so that is the second characteristics of tribal studies. First we studied the objectivity, and second is the precision. Okay, so and third is the design. When we study those tribal communities, as we first state that it is a systematic and scientific investigation to their life, to their social life or their cultural life. So, a specific research design should be carried out for the investigation. The proper scientific process should be implemented to study that tribal life. Okay, so and uh, like that designs, or that research tool, it can also be used by the other researchers. Okay, like we have certain kind of common steps when we investigate those tribal community. That is the uh, first we define the problem, then we state the hypothesis. Okay, or then we try to uh, collect the data and analyze the data and test it, those hypotheses, and then the result is declared. Okay, so by following these certain steps, you you have to follow the various research design. Okay, so those research designs may be of qualitative or maybe of quantitative designs. Okay. The, mm, and the fourth characteristics of those that tribal study is, that is verifiability. The result we have declared after analyzing those data, it should be verify, or it should be, or there should be a scope for the other researchers to verify that data or verify that information. Okay, so means there are various approaches are there to achieve that verifiability. Like, one is analyzing the same data on the same sample. The other researchers can do that. Okay, analyzing the same data on the same sample through alternative analytical tool, or alternative research tool, you can say. And for example, how the data was analyzed with a proper statistical tool, if we are applying the other statistical tool, if that result is same or not. Okay, or we can replicate, or we can do the research on other sample. Okay, with those research tools or research designs, or with those, if that statistical packages or statistical analysis can be implemented in the other data or not, other samples data. Okay, so in that process we can verify the information, or you can verify the results. Okay, and the hmm, how that tribal studies, what are the different phases through, based on which it is becoming as a discipline. Okay, so as we first said that the origin and the growth of anthropology has its main root in the tribal studies. Okay, so their demand is the first. They or the anthropologist, they demand for the establishment of this as a discipline, tribal study as a different discipline. Okay, so that is the first point. And as we say, know that uh, the anthropologist or the British administrator, they have studied the tribal communities as a different group of India, different community of India. Means they are trying to study the part of larger culture. Okay, so there should be a different discipline to study that diverse culture or diverse community. Okay, that is the second demand, you can say. Okay, so to study that Indian pluralism, okay, there's the tribal studies should be established as a different discipline. Okay, this was the mainly demand in between, you can say, the first decade of post independence. Okay, so there should be a different branch to study the other culture. Okay, and another demand or another context where the discipline is where this discipline is getting more acclaim is that in the era of modernization, uh, the tribal studies, it has been mainly in the perspective of uh, development of human rights. Okay, so as we have studies the tribal communities in the colonial period, just to know the our identity, means we have sharpened, or researchers have sharpened their identity. Like, there are other communities are there, and we belong to the different community, we belong to the different society. Okay, that was the perspectives. Okay, so over a period of time, we have, uh, you will see, we have studied that tribal community. We have studies those tribal communities with a particular kind of Western approaches. Okay, so uh, uh, the racial perspective was there when we have started the study of tribal communities. Okay, like the British administrator or the British anthropologist, or during the in the pre-independence era, whoever have studied the uh, uh, tribal communities, they have a particular kind of perspective, or Western perspectives were there. Okay, so the Indian perspectives was absent, or it was neglected. Okay, so and another fact, it can be seen that there is you a negligible presence of the tribal scholars. Okay, so tribal communities, where the tribal communities, they are studied by the British anthropologists or the British scholars, or you can say the other scholars who are not from the tribal communities. Okay, so they have differently understood the tribal communities, so, which is not accepted by them. Okay, so there is a less present of, or the least present of their perspectives. Okay, so uh, after independence, or you can say when we have passed different decades, you will see that there is a growing demands of tribal studies by the tribal scholars, or the scholars who belong to those tribal communities. Okay, they can better understand their community, or in the post colonial period, you will say, uh, have tried to mm, give least importance to the Western methodologies or Western perspective to study the tribal community. Like, we have uh, we have said that those communities were characterized with the primitives, okay, or uncivilized. Okay, these are the concept, or these are the mm, mm, the terms which is used by the uh, Western scholars. Okay, so yes, yes, there are some queries, I think. Please unmute yourself. Or after completing 1 hour, we can discuss the question. Okay, so in a post-colonial period, we have tried to establish a discipline called tribal studies, where the indigenous perspectives, or the perspective by the tribal communities can be implemented. Okay, uh, and yes, there is a gap between the understanding of tribals by the tribals by the non-tribals. That will be present whenever we are trying to understand the other communities. definitely we will try to understand their community institutions or community life by comparing with our community life or community experience, how we have lived. Okay, so there will be a gap. Okay, so in a post colonial era or in a post independent era, we want to put forth that perspective by the tribal community also, or by the tribal researcher also. Okay, so so that is another demand, to establish tribal studies as a different discipline where they can put their perspective to study the tribal communities. Okay, and in the era of globalization, uh, we have uh, we have tried to mm, incorporate that interdisciplinary approach. Okay, so by demand from the other social sciences is also there to establish tribal study as a different social science. Okay, uh, because in an interdisciplinary approach, uh, that same issue can be same issue can be taken up by the different social scientists, as like the anthropologist or the economist or any political science research scholar. Okay, the same issue can be viewed or can be analyzed with their uh, discipline perspectives. Okay, uh, and if you see the discipline of tribal studies, it has been developed by the scholar from western countries, and it is basically based on the western concept of rationality. uh, those community or those scholars, they did not find any justification or rationality on various kind of social life of tribal communities or the practices of tribal communities. uh, it has uh, it has forced them, or it has led them to evaluate their community, uh, or labeled them as a backward community. Okay, or those studies were not uh, that had not been done beyond that western concept of rationality. Okay, they have tried to or we will say that the conclusion of those study or the results of those studies are they have tagged those tribal communities as a primitive, or the community who have the primitive thought or primitive practices like the livelihood practices, who don't use the scientific knowledge or the science and technology for their livelihood. Okay, uh, there are also you see uh, this study or this discipline, it is become it is becoming more holistic as it try to cover the tribal life in a uh, uh, you will say in a 360-degree manner. It will try to cover each and every aspect of tribal life. Okay, uh, like the anthropologists, they want to define them. The political science researchers, they want to study their administration, or they want to study their traditional political structures. What are the political institutions were present, or what are the laws, traditional laws or indigenous laws are present in their communities. Okay, or an psychologist or a psychologist want to study the stress among those tribal communities, a new concept. Okay, in that community, how it is, uh, like if it is there or not, or what are the major causes. Okay, so everything we want to cover. Okay, and mm, the strength of those tribal studies, it is originated from the growing implications and emerging attention to the distinct analytical issues and empirical findings in the field of tribal studies. Okay, like in recent year, we have, or in recent months, we have seen various news clips which are coming, like inter caste and tribe conflict, or tribes and tribal conflicts, intra-tribal conflicts, okay, or issues relating to politics among the tribal communities. Okay, so these are the new emerging issues where uh, where different scholars or the academia wants to interface. Okay, so there is a growing demand to establish, or growing demand to establish these as a different discipline. Okay, and the relevance, we will say, uh, 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 of tribal studies in the present context is that, though after independence, constitutions was it is established, and it has tried to legally empower the tribal community, still, or yet to those communities, they are yet to receive the fruit of those constitutional rights. Many of the tribal communities, they are ignorant, or they're unaware about those in constitutional rights or constitutional safeguards. Okay, uh, uh, and in a continuous basis, we will see there are many changing forces which are coming, or which are going in those tribal life. Okay, so there should be a separate discipline to understand all those interventions, or all those issues which are burning within that communities. Okay, so there is a growing demand to establish this as a different discipline. Okay. And the challenges to establish it as a different disciplines are, you will see, uh, as we have noticed that there is a lack of the tribal researchers, tribal scholars. Okay, so you will see we have a scarcity of personals who are oriented about the tribal life, or who are well versed with the tribal life. Okay, so there should be proper orientation about the challenges arising due to globalizations, or to the social scientists in general and social workers in particulars. Okay, so whenever any scholar from any discipline is going to those fields, they should be well versed with the different challenges which are arising because of various kind of changing forces, like we said, globalization, modernization, or any kind of economic changes which are affecting those communities. Okay, so there should be more aware about those challenges. And uh, the person who are directly in contact with those tribal communities, or tribal communities, they should disseminate the information to the tribal communities regarding different kind of policy measures, or the like we said, constitutional empowerments. Okay, or they should be aware about that. Then only they can uh, disseminate those informations. Okay, and whenever they want to orient the challenges regarding the impact of uh, different kind of changes. Okay, so uh, they have to know the challenges, what can be the resulting challenges whenever these kind of changing forces are entering to to those societies. Okay, for example, mm, in this internet era. Okay, so what could be the challenge for those communities, as the state is now more prone towards the digitized India. Okay, so an researcher, or a researcher, he should be more uh, informed about the arising challenges of this kind of situation. Okay, or equipped with the not full-fledged solution, but with some kind of solution to those challenges. Okay, uh, and another the ma- the the most difficult challenge for the discipline is to get recognition as a different discipline. Okay, to establish this as a different discipline in the different uh, mm, universities, or it should be recognized by the UGC, you can say. Okay, that is the most topmost challenge for the discipline. Okay, how you will differentiate the demand of this discipline with the other social science, what are the importance of this discipline, what are the separate approaches of these disciplines, or new approaches of disciplines which are different or distinct from the other social science approaches, that should be uh, that should be propagated by the different scholars. Then only it can be accepted as a different discipline in the by the UGCs or any other body. Okay, so going to the next unit, that is different perspectives of studying uh, of tribal studies, of studying tribal communities. Okay, so as we in a first unit we said that we discussed that who are the tribes, and how tribal study it was started by whom, who are the scholars who have tried to study it, and what are the characteristics of tribal studies, like we said objectivity, precision, or we said that is verifiability, and another is that is I forgot that, objectivity, precision, and verifiability, and another I forget that. Okay, so there are more four characteristics of tribal
I think, ma'am, it is design and verifiability.
design and verifiability. Okay, so that is the thing, and how, what are the different context or different demands by the different sections of scholars who want to a- establish this as a different discipline. Okay, so in the second unit you will see we will try to cover what are the different approaches of tribal studies. uh, in first unit we have just discussed that interdisciplinary, the nature of tribal study is more of a kind interdisciplinary. Okay, it can take the approach of psychology, it can take approach of economics, or it can take the anthropologist approach. Okay, so what are the major uh, approaches are there in tribal studies, which has been enlisted in this study material. Okay, so majorly 12 approaches are there, which has been enlisted. Okay, as we know that whenever we have tried to study the tribal community in a pre-independence era or in a post-independence era, okay, the scenario of pre-independence era, you will see in our history books also, we haven't seen the clear description of those tribal communities. The history of India is largely covered by the king's lifestyle, palaces, or the communities who are close to the kings. Or you can say the larger part of history is the king's lives, and then the other non-tribal communities. Art and culture of king palace, or the non-tribal communities, uh, those have been written in the history. We will find very few lines about the tribal communities. Okay, and those are also written in a different manner. Different manners means very few lines will be there. Okay, they will be termed as the other communities. A clear cut term for that tribal community is not found in our Indian history. Okay, the other communities of jungles or other communities of societies or the Banavasis, something like that. Okay, very few lines of few terms you will find regarding the tribal community. Forget about their social lives or cultures. Okay, as we are more obsessed with the king's lives and king's culture, king's values, different other things which is revolving around the king's rules, different things. Okay, so we have you can say very few lines or least information uh, regarding the tribal communities of India. And in oral history also, yeah, oral history or in history, you will find very few lines. Like in our epic literature, there are also few lines about those tribal communities or tribal lives. Okay, like in Ramayana or Mahabharata, few points you will find. Okay, the name of that communities or the person belonging in the from that jungle communities, and how that person has interacted with the different characters of epic literature, it will be there. The more part will be the other character than the tribal community characters. Okay, uh, yeah, those communities definitions. Okay, so those were missing in those epic literatures or in those Indian history. Okay, uh, uh, and you will after the British administration, they have established the colonies in India. First, in the census, they have tried to identify them as a tribal communities. Okay, so from that point, they have got a name. Okay, that is the মানে kind of approach we have seen in the pre-independence era or in the Vedic period, you can say. Okay, so and as we said that those history, they are more elitist. Those histories or the oral histories or the written history, they were dominated by the certain sections of the society. Okay, so as we said that the oral history, whoever have the knowledge of that oral history, it will praise, or that person will say, as the person perceived, it will preach like that. and the communication power or the accessibility to those knowledge was limited with the few section of the society. So the knowledge regarding or the information regarding the tribal community was limited. In the written history also it is same. Okay, we that knowledge regarding the tribal community, it was very few, or a few information you will find, because it was laid by the elite group or the few other sections of the society who have that power to access, who have that power to means write those things. Okay, so that was uh, limited to those communities only, few communities only. Okay, so when we try to define the tribe, okay, we have to trace the history of tribal community. In there we fail. There is of as we discussed, history is silent regarding the tribal communities. Okay, so the term called tribe, it is a Latin word, as we all knows that it is a Latin word, uh, from Latin word, the tribus Latin word. From that, the term tribe is coming. Okay, and these tribus, it was for a specific group. They have used it for a specific group or a specific community of that society. Later, Greek also used that word, tribe, for a specific community who are not belonging to their mainstream society. Okay, and in English literature also, it has came in very late, like in 16th century itself. We will say they have tried to inculcate, or they have tried to include this term. Okay, so the term itself, it is defined as, it is an aggregate of some stocks. Okay, so that stocks, here it is referred to the social groups. Okay, and that social groups, they may have a they can they can be a aggregate of certain communities, or certain group families, or you can say those community have a common, one chief will be there, and they are uh, they are in a primitive stage, or they are in a the pre-modern stage of society. Okay, and sometimes uh, in those literatures they have been tagged as the primitive, or they are the in a barbarous condition. Okay, so these are the certain terms which are used for the tribal communities. Okay, so there are certain famous definitions of tribes are there. Like W.S. River, he has said that tribe is a social group of simple kind, the members of which speak a common dialect, have a single government, and act together for such common purpose as welfare. Okay, so the first part of defining tribal community, we are stuck with that idea. There is a homogeneity among this community in respect to the culture, in respect to the political system, in respect to the dialect, or in respect to the religion. Okay, so the community is following a similar kind of all those things. Okay, and uh, like in Indian context, we have tagged them as the poor, backward, superstitious, and natives. Okay, so like we the definition of those communities, still it was like that. Okay, so Uh, in India, you will see we have a term is that STs. It means scheduled tribes. Okay, the term has been given as a scheduled tribe, but the who are the scheduled tribes? The criteria of defining those scheduled tribes, it has not been mentioned. Okay, so it is with the discretionary of you will say the certain officials related to president office. They may notify who are the scheduled, okay, or they may denotify the groups who are in a scheduled groups. Okay, so we have failed to define those criteria whom we will take to those scheduled communities. Okay, what are the criteria who can be included in the scheduled eh, section? Okay, so because in India, as we said that more than 700 types of tribal communities. Okay, they are heterogeneous and they have unique cultures. Okay, from them, how you will choose? Okay, that clear cut definition is not there in the constitution also. Okay, so in relation to the conceptualization of tribe, Virginius Khaka, he has tried to mention that the features and the characteristics of tribal community, it is studied in relation to the larger society. Okay, so we have the whatever features, whatever characteristics we have mentioned, that has been that were the result of the characteristics in comparison with the mainstream society. Like we have termed them as a backward. It means the other community lifestyles or the living standard, it is not similar with that community. Okay, we have termed them as a uncivilized. So there is a difference between that two community, tribals and non-tribal community. They have a different religion. Okay, like in non-tribal community, they have other kind of religion, and this tribal community, they have a different religion. Okay, different dialect. So everything, it is in comparison or in relation to the mainstream community. We have tried to define those community. Okay, so the tribal communities in India, they are made. We have, if we see carefully analyze those characteristics, very few positive characteristics you will find. All those characteristics, like therefore they're backward, they're superstitious, they're primitive, they're uncivilized. Okay, all these are the negative kind of characteristics or the kind of attributes we have attached to those communities. Okay, very few positive characteristics of positive natures we have identified them. Okay, so so the definition of tribal community, it is still in a process, and it is yet to be that is universalized. Okay, and definitely it will take a very longer period of time. Maybe we will not get that uh, universal definition of tribal community as the society is dynamic, or it is continuously changing, or the demand of the different scholars, the approaches of the different scholars, it is also continuously it is getting revamped, or it is getting updated. Okay, so that common definition we may not find as and when the as and when what is the context will try to uh, spell out that definitions. Okay, Okay, so as we stated that there are 12 major perspectives to study the tribal society. Is there? First perspective is your historical perspectives. Okay, as we said that this historical perspectives, the first word was how the different anthropologists they have studied, and the British anthropologists, administrators, come anthropologists they have studied, and the other research scholar they have studied the various tribal communities of India for their objectives or for their purpose, like the anthropologist for the well administration, or the administration, or the administrator for their own purpose. Okay, they have tried to study it, like British administration. They have tried to study the tribal communities to rule over them, and how to maximize the profits or export from that locality or from their geographical location. That was the purpose. Okay, so they have their own purpose of studying the tribal communities in different phases of history. Okay, the historical perspectives generally deals with the, it has started with the colonial perspectives to study the tribal society. Like uh, in those colonial era, whoever the scholar, administrator, or the anthropologist, or the bureaucrats, whoever the scholars, they have tried to preserve, or they have tried to document the various kind of tribal life, or various aspects of tribal life, like the society itself, the culture, economy, the relationship between tribe and caste, land right, uh, like the changing social institutions after the invasion of various western groups, or after the interacting with the other non-tribal groups, what are the changes, all these were being documented. Okay, so the first part of the first decades, or you can say the first part of historical studies, where they have tried to document the life, they have tried to know the community, they have tried to document the life of tribal communities, culture, religion, uh, administration, interaction, result of those interaction, all things, all those things, it has been documented. Okay, so there are certain examples are there in relation to those documents documentation, like in all those documented in the colonial periods, the names of those tribal communities they have termed as the animist, means the community who are practicing animism as a culture. Okay, or tribal animist, or you will see hill and forest tribes. Okay, primitive tribes, backward tribes. Okay, so these are the different phases where how where the tribal communities has been termed with the different terminologies. Okay, uh, uh, like the purpose of these historical studies has also uh, different in different phases of history. Like uh, the British had developed different attitudes towards the tribal communities they had encountered, and they have also implemented different laws and act for those tribal areas. Okay, for example, licensing policies over the forest and agricultural produces, and it has resulted a different scenario. Okay, uh, for the tribal communities the approaches of British administrator were they should be kept isolated uh, for the administration purpose. And the second thing is that they can have a maximum exploitation over the natural resources of those communities. Okay, so they have introduced the new laws like licensing those natural resources. Okay, so it has resulted like it has exploited those communities. Directly and indirectly, it has burdened those tribal communities. Okay, uh, so and another the next attempt or the next initiative of the Britishers was because they senses that the dissatisfaction among those tribal communities getting high because of those kind of impositive laws on the tribal communities. Okay, so they want to uh, protect them. The next initiative was to protect them from the outer communities or the non-tribal communities. So they developed the policies of isolation to keep the tribal community away from the mainstream society. And again, the result was same. Okay, so they was kept in that hostility and they was kept in that exploitation. It had kept that tribal areas out of the non-tribal communities purview. Okay, so what is happening in those areas? It is unknown to the outer world. Okay, and the benefits were taken by the British administration or the Britishers. They failed to protect the rights of those tribal communities. Okay, so and another purpose was that not only to protect them from the outer world, the indirect purpose was the latent purpose were if they are interacting with the non-tribal communities, they may have a political mileage they can take, or they can be more politically, they can be more empowered, which will be definitely not beneficial for the British administration. And it is the uh, gain for the non-tribals political movement, like for the freedom movement. Okay, so they will be the addition to the movement against the Britishers. So they try to implement the other law or the isolation policy for the tribal communities. And the second approach is institutional perspectives. Okay, so that is uh, uh, mm, like in a first part we said that in a historical perspective we have tried to document or we have tried to preserve the tribal life. Okay, mainly related to the custom, tradition, culture, and the society itself. Okay, but in a institutional perspective, we have come down to the different institutions, like political institution. For example, when they were kept isolated from the mainstream society, or the exploitation was at its high level, so the tribal community they were gathered, the political strength were seen at that time of the tribal communities. Okay, so those political institutions were studied in the institutional perspectives. Okay, so uh, they dealt with the representation of like in the institutional perspective, we have tried to find the tribal communities in different other institutions. Okay, so first was we have tried to study the different institutions of tribal community and their tribal communities presence in the different other institutions. Okay, so in the present context you can see that though the community, tribal community, they are empowered with constitutional safeguards, but still, or we are yet to find the presence of those tribal communities in different other institutions. Though we have the reservation in education and jobs, but many times those reserved seats or those reserved jobs are vacant. Okay, so the presence of those tribal communities after getting such constitutional safeguard is like this, or without those safeguards, you cannot imagine. Okay, so these are the issues how we want to study those tribal societies. Okay, so in politics, in jobs, in economic endeavors or economic sectors, we find very few or low presence of these tribal communities. Okay, so the percentage of those communities are neglected or very negligible. Okay, so the institutional perspectives to study the tribal society is to find out those issues, okay, or to suggest the different mechanism to how to address those issues. Okay, and the third perspectives uh, of tribal study is development and planning perspectives. Okay, uh, as we have already discussed that in the post-independent era, the many many ruling government, they have tried to implement different policies for the different sections of society, and for the tribal communities also they have implemented various kind of policies for the welfareistic policies or sub plans. They have developed many kind of policies and program for the tribal communities. Okay, so but the result are not satisfactory. Okay, as we have seen that the mainstream society, the gap between the policy implementation and the like the deliberations, okay, who are getting the benefits of those policies, there is a huge gap at the implementation level and at the ground level. We will find a different scenario. Okay, so in these tribal communities also that kind of scenarios are seen. Okay, so the development and policy approach, it is also uh, uh, it has also tried to suggest new uh, modalities to you can say to cater that developmental fruits to those tribal communities. Okay, so we have examples like we have tried to uh, establish, or we have tried to earmark certain amounts of budgets in different um, policy periods in 5 years, 5-year plans. Okay, so we have earmarked this amount of budget should be for this communities. Okay, we have tried to implement the integrated tribal development policies. Okay, project for the primitive tribal communities. Okay, we have tried to implement the modified area development approach. We have tried to implement the tribal subplan, etc. Okay, so after analyzing or after evaluating the mainstream policies, the policies which are for the every sections of society in a particular society. Okay, so we have tried to develop the separate policies and uh, plans for the tribal community itself, just to make them uh, enjoy the uh, fruits of development or fruits of those any kind of policies and programs. Okay, So, and in this policies and development approach, we want to evaluate all those implemented policies and programs. Okay, how they are reacting, how they are responding to those policies and programs. Those are also issues. Okay, and the fourth approach is that integrative integration perspectives or integrator perspective. Okay, so I think you must have heard about Nehru's Panchashil approach. Okay, so the in a historical perspective, we have heard that like Britishers, they want to isolate that community. They should be kept in a different zone, and they should not be disturbed. Okay, so that was their approach. In the integration approach, which were mainly implemented in the post-independent era, the Nehruvian approach of Panchashil was there, which spell like in third unit we will also clearly discuss that approach, what are the major objectives and how it was being implemented. The major outline of those sponsorship was the tribal people should be developed along with the lines of their own genius, and nothing should be imposed on the tribal communities. The second proposition was respect of the tribal rights on land and forest should be there, and minimum investment or minimum like the interaction with the outsider or the non-tribal community should be there, and more tribal administrator should be there. It means they should plan they should plan the development for themselves. Okay, so there's the planners or the implementer should be from the tribal community itself. Okay, and uh, uh, and the fourth was that the administration and the launching of the multi-purpose scheme should avoid the effect within the framework of their social and cultural uh, institution, and we should evaluate the result of those policies and program, and the result should not be mm, that should not be quantified. The result should be qualitatively analyzed. It means how the life of tribal community it has developed. Okay, uh, and this integration perspective. Okay, so it has tried to integrate the cultural part, or the cultural integration should be there. Culture of the tribal community should be there. Okay. Uh, this perspective, in a Panchashil approach of Nehru, it rejects the imposition of other non-tribal communities, uh, and it tries to encourage the maintain of the unity of those tribal community. Okay. And it tried to illustrate that as the part of the integration policy for the Indian tribes, we have to help them to develop socially, economically, culturally, and how they should means at which point they will integrate, what should be imbibed, which part of the mainstream culture should be imbibed by them. It should not be dictated. Okay, so that are the major principles of integrative perspective or integration perspective. And the fifth perspective is that stratification perspectives. Okay, like we have seen that mainstream society or non-tribal society, the, the stratification of non-tribal society is mainly based on the caste ethos or caste ideologies. Okay, but the tribal community, you will not find that stringent stratification system. Okay, you will find the groups in tribal community, but not that hierarchical division. Okay, so among the tribal communities, different uh, groups will be there, different other tribal communities will be there, but they are not stratified in a particular hierarchical manner. Okay, but there are also instances are there, whenever there is a interaction or there is a chance of interacting with the non-tribal communities, uh, they are imbibing that non-tribal form of stratification. Okay, as we can see that, like, the gender stratification in a non-tribal society and a gender stratification in a tribal society. Okay, prior to those interaction, it was different. After the interaction with the non-tribal society, we are getting that kind of binary divisions. Means the that patriarchal form of gender division is getting imbibed in the tribal societies also. Okay, so no doubt we cannot ignore these kind of interaction, or this interaction cannot be stopped. There will be a continuous process of these changes, or those transitions will be there. Okay, we have to address those issues. Okay, or what are the different form of certification in the tribal communities which are present in those society, and how in a transition phase those stratification systems are getting affected, or what are the impact on those uh, institutions, or on those strata specifically, you can say. Okay, and fifth perspective is that it is gender perspective, as we uh, discussed that. Yes, we have commonly heard about the characteristics of tribal societies, that there is a highest status of uh, women in that society. The status of women is higher in the tribal society. Okay, uh, but there are different opinions are there. Uh, like Virginius Kaka, he said that you will find a shift in that context. Okay, no longer that status is static. The status of the tribal women, it is getting affected by the status of non-tribal women. Okay, now they are also in those risk areas. The evil practices of those non-tribal communities with regards to the women, it is also entering to the tribal society. Okay, so a different perspectives or can be seen in the ground of those tribal society. Okay, so uh, in realities you will not find that the status of tribal women is higher among the tribal communities. It can be felt that it is same as in the non-tribal communities also. Okay, they are also exploited in that community. Maybe the form of exploitation is different from the non-tribal communities. Okay, and the seventh perspective is that it is administration perspectives. like uh, 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 like we have seen that in a colonial period. Okay, so we have separately formed different laws for their administration. Okay, this should not be the approaches to rule the non-tribals and the approaches to rule the tribals was different. Okay, but after independence, that still that thing is remain there. It is present. We are still continuing with those approach. Okay, we have not changed. There is not a major shift from that approaches. Still, as we have said that in the development and planning approach, we have said that we are planning a separate policies and program for the different community itself, and for the sub community or the subgroups of those tribal communities, we are developing it sub plans for them. Okay, so how we have differed? Still, we are following the those British administrators approach to rule or to administer the tribal communities. Okay, so how the administration, or how we can be more integrative towards that administration of the different community along with those tribal community, it should be the main focus. Okay, how they can be more integrated in the main administrative process of the uh, state. Okay, that should be the main focus. And the eighth approach is your anthropological approach. Okay, we have uh, already studied that, uh, like they are more involved in the uh, like defining the tribe in a present context. Okay, how they have defined the tribe in a pre-colonial period, in a colonial period, and post-colonial period. Still, they are involved in that process to define the tribal community in this transition phases. Okay, uh, like we have noticed that in Odisha specifically, we have I think two more community they have been identified from 62 to 64. Okay, there is a additions. Okay, so in every year you will see those parameters are getting changed. Okay, or the committee they are getting changed, the scholars they are getting changed. Okay, so the approaches to study the tribal communities and the what we have stated, the uh, different parameters on which we are studying, those are getting changed. Okay, so definitely we will be more involved in defining the tribal communities. Okay, so there will be addition in the schedule, there will be also the drop from that schedule. Different many communities will be dropped from that schedule list of the scheduled tribes. Okay, so you have also noticed that there are many communities who are demanding to be involved or to be scheduled in those list. Okay, or to be included in those lists. So these kind of issues are taken up by the anthropologist, or it is addressed by the with the anthropological perspectives. Okay, so they have a different perspective. All those transitions should be uh, uh, it should be addressed, or this should get equal opportunities. Like the uh, the social conditions of the particular region, it is same, but we are defining a particular group as a tribe and another community as a non-tribal communities. The socio-economic or the geographical condition of that locality is same. Okay, but how we are differentiating, that is the concern of those uh, research. That should be the concern of those research. Okay, like the uh, some communities in Odisha, like uh, Mahatos, or we are saying, or Kudumis, we are saying, or there are some other communities in that locality you will find those other tribal communities also. Okay, so the anthropological approach is to accommodate or to give equal importance to all those transitions. Okay, and the ninth perspective is that the comparative perspectives. Okay, like in this perspective, we'll majorly see that uh, 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 we have tried to study the tribal community by comparing it with the other tribal communities or with the non-tribal communities. Okay, uh, it tries to examine the commonalities and differences of tribals society with the other sections of the society, as well as the other indigenous group of the same region, you can say, or in the different parts of the world. Okay, like mm, it studies the heterogeneous culture like tribals and non-tribal cultures, or tribal cultures and cultures of converted tribal communities. Okay, or tribals and converted tribal communities and tribal communities, how they are interacting. Okay, uh, uh, it also tried to it doesn't only compare between the two cultures, rather it also try to make that uh, you can say that it try to accommodate their perspectives also. Like when we compare the different cultures, okay, by having knowledge over our culture, we compare or we know the other culture, like what is the major characteristics of our religion, and what, basing on those knowledge, we try to know the other religions, if those characteristics or if those things are present or not there in other religions. That is the work of comparative perspective. So it gives a different perspectives, or it gives you another chance to study the same culture. Okay, like if a particular mm, nature is present in this community or not, you try to revisit that culture. It gives you their perspective to study the particular tribal life. Okay, and 10th is your ethnographic perspectives. Like in this ethnographic perspectives, you will see uh, in how in different phases of history this community they have been termed as the tribal communities. Okay, or how uh, like we have termed them as the like western society, it has termed them as the uh, non literate, uncivilized, uh, who are arrested in the development, or they're non-industrial or non-urban, lacking of economic specialization, or the presence of these traits, maybe it is lesser degree in those communities. Okay, so uh, in both the cases, means in a positive or in a negative characterization of these communities. Okay, you will find these communities. Okay, uh, they have a different kind of operations, or they have a different kind of goals. Okay, and the 11th perspective is that is demographic perspective. It means like the characters demographic characteristics of these communities you mainly studied, and how the demographic characteristics they are affecting the tribal communities. For example, the size of the tribal communities population. Okay, you have heard that uh, in the island zone of tribal concentration. There are many languages which are getting extinct, that are getting extinct because of the uh, extension of or extinct of the that population itself. Because there is zero population of that community, that language is getting extinct. Okay, so the demographic situation or the demographic characteristics has an impact on the tribal life. Okay, like the increase and decrease number of the tribal population, it has an impact on their tribal life. Okay, or increase and decrease in the sex ratio of the tribal community is had an impact on the tribal sociocultural lives, social lives of the cultural lives. Okay, so you can draw certain conclusion, you can draw certain result from out of those demographic studies. Okay, uh, uh, and the 12th approach we have already, or the perspective we have already discussed, that is the interdisciplinary perspectives. Okay, so coming to the third unit of this block, that is the tribal discourse in social science. Okay, in this unit, mainly the like four discourse we will study. That is the policy of isolation in the pre-independence period, and second is the policy of assimilation, uh, and third is the policy of integration in the post-independence periods, and fourth is the contemporary debates and the policy of neglect. Okay, so in the policy of uh, isolation, you will see the whenever we have thought of the development of the tribal communities, we have initiated, we have started with different kind of approach. As we have already discussed that in the first part of our development decades, or in the pre-independence era, or in a colonial period, we are mainly uh, concentrating with the isolation approach. As we have already discussed that the colonial policy of exclusion, of exclusion of tribal areas, was largely an outcome of the work of ethnographer, ethnologist, or the anthropologist, or the sociologist, or historian, or Christian missionaries, you can say. Okay, so they were kept as a kept in a, you can say, in a uh, glass ceiling, just for the academic purpose. Okay, uh, yes, you have identified a particular community, and this should be the concern for the academic research. Rather, they are considered as the, means they are not considered as the part of our larger society. They are differently treated, they are treated as a community which should be studied, and they should be kept isolated. There should not be least interference with that community. Okay, uh, so we have also seen that the very Elvin study on the Boyga tribes, they were also trying to it has also want to it has stated that they want their locality, it should be ruled over by their chief, or by their administration system. Means in that study, Elvin study, he has mentioned that they want a Boygaraj. Means their administrative system should prevail in their locality or in their region. They also want their kind of administration. Okay, uh, uh, this isolation approach, it simply spells that uh, uh, it leads the tribals live their life in their own, not interfered by the other tribal communities. Okay, so like alien has a other concept. There should be a national park, or there should be a park or museum for those communities. They are treated as the specimen or the models for the museum. Okay. uh, in this isolation policy, you will say that uh, there are two approaches were there. The first approach was that they want to separate them from the mainstream society for their administrative purpose, and to get the maximum benefits out of from their geographical uh, 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 that the geographical location, because those isolated areas or those habitations were rich with the minerals. Okay, so they want to exploit those things. Because of that, they want to keep them isolated. And second thing is that they don't want to mix with the non-tribal communities, as they can add to the strength of the non-tribal communities movement for the freedom movement or the political strength. That is another perspectives. Okay. And second was that uh, the second point was that because they follow or they practice the animism, or they are termed as the animist, this should be, their administration should be uh, to administer them, it is very difficult. Okay, so they should be kept isolated. And uh, and as we already discussed that it will keep them away from the developing political that is political momentum or political uh, 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 that is movements. Okay. So, and there are also criticisms to this the results of this isolation is because they're uninterrupted, and the and and undisturbed. Okay, the secretions of those tribal communities was getting worse. Okay, and they are definitely they are disconnected with the mainstream society. And because the policies which were framed to keep them isolate and to get maximum from their local environment, they have the discontentment among the tribal community, it has arisen. Okay, so there is a massive discontentment because uh, the license to they have to get the license to use their own natural resources, like forest land resources which was owned by them. Now they have to get the permission from the British administration. So the use of forest land or the common property, it was getting limited. Okay, and there is a limit, the limited interaction with the non-tribal was also there. So there was a dissatisfaction among those tribal communities was there. And some you will say there are some criticisms to that isolation policies were there, as because these mm, because of these isolation policies, the regions were more exploited. Okay, the more burden on the natural resources were made, because it's this isolation policy or the isolation policies, it has kept that locality inaccessible to the other for the other tribal or non-tribal communities. Okay, so they have how they want to use. Okay, so they have tried to maximize the profit out of those localities. Okay, so there is an extra burden to those localities. Okay, and the Thakkar Bappa rightly he has pointed that he has criticized this theory or this policy as uh, to keep these people confined to the isolation in these accessible hills and jungles is something like keeping them in a glass museum for the curiosity of purely academic persons. Okay, so nothing has changed, or the as we have expected how the development should take place. The result was nothing like that in the in that policy. Okay, so yes, as the time has uh, it has gone, so we will cover the next part of this unit, the third unit and the fourth unit in our next class, and block 2 will be start in our next class. Okay. Yes, for today I am closing this class. Okay, we will continue with this unit 3 of the block 1 and unit 4 of the block 1, and we will start the block 2 in our next class, that is on 3rd October. Tomorrow is a holiday, so I'm ending this class here today. Thank you. Yes, I think some of you are writing regarding the assignment. I don't have those idea. You can ask uh, to the other persons who are managing this course. So directly you can ask to them. I don't have idea on those things. Okay, and the materials which you are writing, I think they will share to you. The link they will share it to you. You will get that thing. Okay. Yes, if you have any other queries, please write, or you can ask the person who are in charge of this. Okay, thank you.